Now, the facts tell the story. With Huel Perkins, Sherry Margolis, and the news team voted the best in Michigan. This is TV2 First News at 4.
Good afternoon, I'm Sherry Margolis.
And I'm Huel Perkins.
And here's your first look at news for Wednesday, April 28, 1993.
A 9-year-old Taylor boy woke up to a horrifying sight today. He found his mother stabbed to death. Police say Deborah Flood was killed inside her home on Gully Street about 7:30 this morning. Her son and the boy's grandmother made the gruesome discovery, and police have arrested a female friend of the victim. TV2's Jennifer Howe lets the facts tell the story.
Yellow crime tape rings the house where Deborah Flood lived with her 2 sons and baby daughter. Neighbors looked on as investigators combed through the home this afternoon.
It's sad, you know, no one deserves something like that. I just don't, you know. My husband had to go identify her. I'm glad he was here, because I don't think I could have did it.
Neighbors say Flood's home had become a haven of sorts for her older son's friends, teenagers who came and went all day and night, who were often linked to sporadic vandalism in the neighborhood. This woman says her brother used to socialize with the kids at Flood's home until the group began to get into trouble with the police.
My mom just told him if he kept hanging out that she was just going to ground him to the house so he couldn't go nowhere. That way, it was a way to keep him from being with that person.
She was that concerned about the people in that house?
Yes.
Police have arrested a woman in connection with Flood's murder. Investigators say Deborah Flood's 9-year-old son knew her well. That 9-year-old boy told police he spotted the suspect inside the house early this morning. He told police the woman ran past him out of the house, and a short time later, he found his mother's body. Neighbors describe their street as safe and quiet. Deborah Flood's murder is a shock. Ironically, they've been organizing a neighborhood crime watch program. Their first meeting is tonight.
We have a lot of elderly people in our neighborhood, and we just want to watch out for them.
Their fears were not lessened by the evidence that indicates Deborah Flood knew her attacker. The Neighborhood Crime Watch program will continue. In Taylor, Jennifer Howe, TV2 First News.
And police are investigating robbery as a possible motive. Sherry?
Attorney General Janet Reno is in the hot seat today. It's the House Judiciary Committee hearings into the standoff in Waco, Texas. Reno is defending her decision to storm the Branch Davidian cult compound despite the fire that killed David Koresh and scores of his followers. At one point, Reno and Michigan Congressman John Conyers got into an emotional exchange about the deaths of those children.
That weren't cultists, they weren't nuts, they weren't criminals, they happened to be the parents of people, and they were innocently trapped in there. And that decision that was jointly made by these agencies bears extreme criticism.
I haven't tried to rationalize the death of children, Congressman. I feel more strongly about it than you will ever know. But I have neither tried to rationalize the death of 4 ATF agents, and I will not walk away from a compound where ATF agents have been killed by people who knew they were agents and leave them unsurrounded.
Conyers is calling for Reno's resignation in the wake of those deaths.
Oh, in other news, you know, back in World War II, it was called This Man's Army, but not anymore. Women will soon be taking an even larger role in the military. Defense Secretary Les Aspin is expected to sign an order tomorrow allowing women to fly combat missions. Ground troops may also include women very soon. TV2's Mike Redford has local reaction to this issue.
Up to now, female pilots have been relegated to flying support and training missions. That'll change on Wednesday when Defense Secretary Les Aspin signs an order allowing women to fly in combat.
My feeling is if a woman wants to do the job and feels that she's capable of doing the job, then she should have that opportunity.
I think it's really good for the women, and I just think it's good really for our whole society, so everybody can just start seeing individuals and their capabilities.
Female pilots drew high praise for their flying in Operation Desert Storm. While some male pilots may have reservations about women in the cockpit, a commander and pilot at Selfridge Air National Guard Base gives high marks to a female pilot he works with.
She does a fantastic job, and I enjoy flying with her very much. And she's an asset to the crew, always.
Allowing women to fly in combat isn't the last of it. Defense Secretary Aspin is repealing the ban that currently prevents women from serving on warships. He's also willing to open up other combat jobs to women unless the armed forces has justification not to, including ground combat.
I think they should be allowed to. If men can do it, why can't women?
I don't think they belong up there.
How come?
I don't think they really will be able to stomach it. be too much for them.
Time will tell if he's right, but for now, women at least are getting a chance to prove him wrong. In Mount Clemens, Mike Redford, TV2 First News.
Now, this is just in. Defense Secretary Les Aspin has just announced seconds ago that the military will lift most prohibitions against women in combat. Now, we want to know what you think about this issue, and you can tell us in our exclusive TV2 phone poll. Here's the question. Do you believe women should be allowed to fight in combat situations? If your answer is yes, call 1-900-6371. If you say no, call 1-900-400-6372. The lines will be open all afternoon and evening, and the call will cost you 60 cents. By the way, we also want to tell you, too, some important news coming up. We'll have much more on Les Aspin's role and his announcement later on this edition of First News. Sherry?
Well, a conversation about a proposed state law that would allow cities to ban topless dancing has two state senators mired in controversy today. During that conversation, off-color references to women's breasts were used. And not only was a woman standing nearby in the state capitol building, she happened to be a newspaper reporter. TV2's John Noel has the story.
On the Senate floor in Lansing this morning, Republican State Senator Jack Wellborn of Kalamazoo apologized for the remark he had made yesterday.
I apologize. It wasn't intended to hurt anybody. It was certainly not about her, and certainly in no way had a disrespect to her. It was a matter of a private conversation between two senators.
But Jennifer Van Doren says it wasn't a private conversation between two senators. She was there.
What did he say?
He said, Senator Wellborn said to Senator Dinello, so how's the Dinello bill going? And, you know, Senator Dinello kind of lifted his lapels and said, oh, yep, they're still here. You know, and then, you know, Senator Wellborn looks at me and says, well, you didn't hear that, did you? And at the time, like, I didn't know what to do, you know, and I get mad at myself because I feel like I should have said something, but I didn't.
What she did was write about the incident in a column for the State News, the Michigan State University student newspaper, mentioning State Senators Wellborn and Gil Dinello by name.
Let me just say this. I think it's an unfortunate situation that happened. I think the whole thing was blown out of proportion, and that's the only thing I have to say.
Now, it's unlikely this incident will rock the Capitol. As one state senator put it, this sort of thing is actually commonplace here, about as commonplace as it is in the rest of society. But State Senator Lana Pollock says there's no excuse for it.
And if we refer to each other in respectful terms at all times, whether we think the mics are on or the mics are off, it's a better way to proceed. You know, it's the thing you tell your children. If you don't mean to offend, then don't say it.
In Lansing, John Noel, TV2 First News.
And we hope to hear more from the female reporter in that story, Jennifer Van Doren, later in this newscast.
Our time now is 4:08, and still ahead here on TV2 First News, a video camera and a microphone are replacing word of mouth as the way to hand down family memories. That story and a way to get some tips for your next home video in the TV2 Senior Report.
Also, finding something at the store that's low-fat and good tasting can be difficult. But Consumer Reports put its kitchen to work and came up with something delicious.
Then later, make it yourself and make it healthy with a delicious treat that blends two favorites together in an eat-to-live recipe. For centuries, family traditions have been passed down from generation to generation through word of mouth or pen and paper. But in today's TV2 Senior Report, Doris Winkler shows you how memories are now being preserved on videotape.
Recently, I went home and spent a few days in Kentucky. That's the state that I was born and grew up in. We had so much fun looking at those old pictures. Well, today, they're keeping the memories of a lifetime a whole new way.
I lost my husband 7 months ago. We were very happily married and had a brain aneurysm, and he passed away. And I wanted to leave something for my grandchildren. Both Dick and my parents died when we were in our 30s, so we just have old pictures.
So Dorothy hired a company called Life Stories Videos, one of many new companies that preserve family legacies in ways that no photo album can touch.
Very often, when someone does pass away, the stuff, the philosophical messages, the anecdotes, the family secrets vanish with a person. And what a pity that is. It's quite a tragedy, and we try to resolve that issue by making a 90-minute video documentation of a person's life.
Life story video, in essence, sits down with these people, talks to them, and allows them to express their feeling, allows them to pass the stories on, much as, you know, the shaman did in the days of cave dwellers.
But they do it with 90s technology, blending in the old photographs, documentary style.
Basically, $3.90 for the base price plus the options.
I don't know that I'll be here in 50 years, but my sons will be here and my grandchildren will be here. And I did it really for the grandchildren.
Recording the family memories on video is just wonderful, and Jerry and Ira have some great tips for you. Write to me here at the station, and I'll send them along. I'm Doris Winkler with the Senior Report.
So if you'd like more information and you'd like to see those tips, send a stamped self-addressed envelope to the Senior Report, WJBK-TV 2, Box 2000, Southfield, Michigan, zip code 48037-2000, and please write video tips on the envelope. It is a great idea.
It's a wonderful idea. I wish I had done that with my grandparents. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very precious video.
Yeah.
Time now is 4:13. Coming up, if you've changed your diet to try and lower your cholesterol, you want to hear the results of a new study about whether it really works.
Also ahead, Consumer Reports tested some of the new low-fat and low-fat foods, and they found them actually pretty good.
And some local school kids come face to face with some of nature's most bizarre creatures. Don't go away.
American women may soon have a new birth control option, female condoms. It's a concept that we first told you about last year, but now it's apparently ready to hit the market. The Food and Drug Administration says the latex devices are nearing final approval. But first, the FDA wants more tests to determine their effectiveness. Female condoms are already on sale in 6 European countries. So you say you've given up hot dogs for tofu just to lower your cholesterol. Well, researchers in Boston say that you may be wasting your time. In the study, more than 100 men and women with higher cholesterol levels ate low-fat diets for several weeks. Doctors found it made only a small difference in a patient's overall risk of heart disease. Cholesterol-fighting drugs, on the other hand, produced a big drop in cholesterol. Now, critics warn that the latest study was funded by a drug company, Merck, and that previous studies have shown that a low-fat diet does lower cholesterol. Sherry?
So don't run out and eat more Twinkies here. Well, when it comes to food, fat-free usually means taste-free, but not always. TV2 business editor Murray Feldman is here to tell us about an exception discovered by Consumer Reports. Murray?
Right, there's some good news here, but you have to be careful. Not only the fat is of concern to you, but something else is. But anyway, let's talk about taste for now. As any dieter can tell you, fat-free foods almost never win rave reviews for their taste. But recently, the experts here at Consumer Reports Test Kitchens found that there is a fat-free oatmeal raisin cookie they say is surprisingly good. Consumer Reports trained testers were on the lookout for a good-tasting cookie.
We expected oatmeal raisin cookies to taste both like oatmeal and like raisins. We expected the texture to be moist and chewy, but also somewhat crisp.
But a cookie that tastes good often has a good deal more fat than you want. So the question was whether 3 no-fat versions could come close. Entenmann's fat-free, Health Valley fat-free, or Auburn Farms fat-free jammers. Sampling most of those no fats turned out to be no fun.
The Health Valley tasted like stale, old, dried fruit, and its texture was reminiscent of a dry sponge. The Auburn Farms jammers was extremely difficult to chew and tasted like raw oats.
The surprise was the Entenmann's. Virtually no fat, all the right flavors, and a slightly crispy, chewy, airy texture. Unfortunately, though, no fat doesn't mean no calories.
The Entenmann's cookies, ounce for ounce, had nearly as many calories as the full-fat cookies.
That's because it depends on lots of sugar to make up for its lack of fat. So Entenmann's fat-free is hardly a dieter's dream. The no-fat cookies were not low in sodium. In fact, Entenmann's had twice as much sodium per ounce as the full-fat cookies tested. So read the entire label before making your choice. One more note tonight. We told you Monday at this time how Consumer Reports had given the Bellini Alessandro 200 baby crib a not acceptable rating. They found the drop side could be released too easily and the baby could fall out. Bellini says the crib was approved by the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and it disputes the Consumer Reports findings, saying they have had not one complaint about the crib's release mechanism. Consumer Reports, though, says it stands by its own study, and it has determined that that crib is absolutely a hazard. So that's Consumer Reports telling you that. The company says, hey, we haven't heard any problems. Consumer Reports says, be careful, our test labs, independent test labs have.
So ultimately, it's up to the parents to make the decision.
Just like with the fat-free food.
Give them the information.
How do you make the decision? There are so many things coming at you, so many different recipes, so many different angles to that.
Well,
so
that's why you're here.
You have to be an educated person.
Thanks.
Thanks. Well, some European customers of the Hoover Company are cleaning up with free airline tickets. The red-faced vacuum cleaner maker is sucking up some $50 million after offering Irish and British customers free trips to the U.S. and other parts of Europe if they bought a vacuum cleaner. The arithmetic is rather simple, and customers caught on really quickly. Vacuum cleaners are a lot cheaper than airline tickets. 3 executives who couldn't add are out of work right now. Now, some elementary school students got hands-on experience today that they will likely never forget. The kids have studied reptiles in school, and thanks to the owner of the Royal Oak Pet Store, they got a chance to study science up close. The students are from Star Elementary School and were able to touch and learn about everything from a 9-foot python to iguanas. They were quite impressed.
I like the alligator. It was interesting. It has a neat line of defense, and there's all kinds of stuff neat about alligators.
What did you learn today?
Like about how animals live and stuff, and what they eat, and how they live their life, and how they protect themselves.
The owners of that pet store say that there is a growing interest in reptiles as pets, and they hope to give the kids an understanding of reptiles from around the world. I think they did a pretty good job today.
Remind me of some people that I've worked with in my life. Present company
not Regs.
excluded.
Very good. Glad you got that line in.
The weather picture looked nice today, Huel, but it could be changing. Some more April showers may be heading our way. TV2 meteorologist Chris Edwards checks the forecast.
Also, strawberries and rhubarb are a favorite combination for many people, and they're teaming up again for a healthy eat-to-live treat when we come back.
Now, your first look at the area's most accurate weather forecast.
It's gorgeous outside right now. 70 degrees. The sun almost as bright as that tie you're wearing.
Not quite. Not quite.
Well, it's still early in the season. Maybe the sun will catch
Bright
up.
one, Chris.
I'm getting a tan just by looking
In
at it.
case you can't tell, they're little kittens holding balloons on a red background.
Thank you very much, Sherry. We could have been able to tell, I'm sure. Oh, yeah, it's a spring day, and this is a spring tie, and here's a question for Good to Know right now. As warm air approaches, cirrus clouds are often followed by what rain-producing clouds? Is it cumulus, nimbostratus, or cumulonimbus? We'll have the answer to that in a moment. In the meantime, here's how it shaped up outside today. 71 for the high, 44 for the low. And 4s out here, too, not just in the low temperature, but folks playing golf, enjoying all the spring-like activity, maybe even holding balloons in some parts of town. Trace of rain fell this morning. Right now, though, no rain around. Look at these temperatures. 72 at Mount Clemens, 71 at City and Toledo, it's 70 at Metro, or we're the cool spot here in Southfield. It's 69 and 70 in Lansing. Everybody has some sun, and there are a few clouds mixed in as well, but nothing real nasty. The low clouds and the rain that I mentioned this morning moved quickly off toward the east, and that allowed the warm air to funnel up here. Now, we have more cloud cover moving in from the west, so this is not going to last, and in spring in Michigan, it usually doesn't when it gets this nice. Matter of fact, there are more clouds where these are coming from, and that'll probably bring us a chance of rain into tomorrow, but this evening and early tomorrow look real nice. Right now, here's how it shapes up. Cold front slicing through the western part of the state, but we're on the warm side of that. Those southwesterly winds getting those temperatures well up there, over 70 degrees. The real cool air that we had the last couple of days off to the east, they had record lows down into New Jersey this morning. So that'll still plague the eastern seaboard tonight. But for us, we'll watch this first little front just kind of ooze through here. Not much cold air behind it. It'll be a nice, mild, dry night tonight. And tomorrow morning, we start off with a little sun, but I mentioned that area of rain. It looks like it'll travel right along toward the northeast, and by tomorrow evening at the latest, we have a good chance of some showers, maybe even a thunderstorm, but I think most of the storms will stay off to the southwest of us. And that's late tomorrow into tomorrow evening, maybe lingering Friday morning, and then it looks like it dries out nicely for the weekend. So the timing here is pretty good. Now, as far as overnight lows tonight, low 50s for lows. That is very mild for this time of year with a southwesterly wind most of the night. And tomorrow, pretty close to today's highs. I think just upper 60s will do it. The 70s should stay off toward the south of us, but that's well above what's normal for this time of year. Forecast then in detail for tonight. We'll call it partly cloudy, 50 for a low on south to southwesterly winds at 4 to 12. Now, tomorrow's high, still a rather respectable 68. We start out with some sun, but then we'll lose that late in the day and that chance of showers toward evening on southwest winds. The rest of the forecast, maybe a morning shower Friday, 63 degrees. And then on Saturday, we'll cool off some, 57. And it looks like the weekend should be dry with a high in the low 60s by Sunday. Now then, our good-to-know question on this day. We wanted to ask you, as a warm front approaches, cirrus clouds are often followed by what rain-producing clouds? And if you guessed that it's nimbostratus clouds, you're absolutely right. We have cirrus clouds, and then it's usually followed by little cats with balloons, and then the nimbostratus cloud. You know, they never taught me that in meteorology school. Cirrus clouds were followed by cats with balloons.
We like the tie. We do.
Thank you very much.
Making fun of a
Sherry likes the tie, right?
My daughters would like it.
Thanks, Chris.
You know, the nemesis of many dieters is the craving for sweets. It's hard to find something to satisfy your sweet tooth that's low in fat and calories. But in today's Eat to Live segment, we're featuring a recipe for strawberry rhubarb crisp that is a dieter's delight. TV2 Health Editor Kay Lowry has details.
Whether you're trying to lose weight or lower your cholesterol, our Heart Smart recipe for strawberry rhubarb crisp is perfect.
This strawberry rhubarb crisp has about 225 calories, whereas your typical apple crisp has about 300 and a lot more fat.
Faye Fitzgerald tosses together strawberries, rhubarb, and sugar.
It does contain quite a bit of sugar. The rhubarb is not a real sweet fruit, and so we do add quite a bit of sugar, but sugar has never been shown to cause any health problems. We just have to be careful that we fit the calories within our diet.
Rolled oats, flour, brown sugar, cinnamon, and margarine make the topping. You bake it for about 45 minutes.
This is a wonderful crisp. It's unique because it's not the apple crisp that people think, but it's a very sweet, very good dessert.
If you grow your own rhubarb, be sure to use only the stalks. The leaves are poisonous. With Eat to Live, Kay Lowry, TV2 First News.
And if you'd like a copy of the recipe, send a stamped self-addressed envelope to Eat to Live, WJBK-TV 2, Box 2000, Southfield, Michigan, 48037. And please write rhubarb crisp on your envelope.
Yeah,
good.
Let me write that down. Yeah. Well, coming up, an amazing story in our next half-hour First News, a story of an extortion plot by an Oakland County youngster who has threatened to kill a neighbor's cat if the owners don't pay him ransom money.
Plus, CBS anchor Dan Rather joins Rich Fisher and Joe Glover live to talk about problems with the criminal justice system, problems that might be endangering all of our lives.
And it's Take Your Daughter to Work Day, and the daughter of one TV2 reporter finds out exactly what mom does all day at work as TV2's First News continues.
TV2 First News continues now with Rich Fisher and Joe Glover.
And good afternoon, everybody. It is 4:32, and an alleged racial slur by a police officer to a minister prompts a big investigation in a Detroit suburb.
That alleged racial insult by a Dearborn police officer has caused the investigation to be launched by a local church organization. Churchgoers are looking into allegations the Dearborn Police Department discriminates against black motorists along the Detroit-Dearborn border. The president of the Detroit Church Improvement Association, Reverend Horace Sheffield III, says a police officer verbally assaulted him and a non-Detroit motorist with racial remarks this morning on Tireman near Schaefer after the police officer pulled the motorist over. Sheffield says the insults came after he asked the officer why so many black motorists are stopped along Tireman every day.
My whole purpose in this is trying to promote some harmony between the two cities. I mean, we spend a lot of money in Dearborn, and we ought to be welcomed whether we're in the Fairlane Mall or riding down Tireman Avenue. And so I'm going to lodge an official complaint. The people who I've talked with are prepared to sign a statement that they did hear him say this, and see if I can't work with the chief of police to deal with the problems that we have as it relates to the patrols on Tarman.
Sheffield is the former chairman of the Detroit-Dearborn Religious Alliance, an organization formed to promote racial harmony between the two cities. The Dearborn Police Department says they have no comment until a complaint is brought to the department. Sheffield says he will file a complaint tomorrow.
Well, it has been said that a cat has 9 lives, but a Troy couple is not taking any chances with their cat. For the past week, someone has threatened to kill Apricot the cat unless they are paid money. Apricot's owners are so frightened, they file a report with Troy police. But as TV2's Al Allen reports, it's not so much the threat, but the age of the person making the threat that has shocked neighbors.
Apricot is a goodwill ambassador in the neighborhood on Babcock Street. She is a free spirit when her owners are at work. Everyone loves Apricot, except a 10 or 11-year-old boy. That's right, 10 or 11-year-old boy who is demanding $40 from Apricot's owners or Apricot is dead. Neighbors are outraged.
I think it's sad. I mean, I don't know what's controlling his mind and so forth, but it's to come up with something like that, it's almost like you're right out of a tabloid.
And like he said, I'd be pretty shocked that a 10-year-old kid would be acting in that way.
Now, neighbors say Apricot act like she owns the neighborhood. She's everywhere. All the kids love her. And they say it's hard to believe someone want to harm Apricot. The boy even sent Apricot's owners a map and note telling them where to drop off the money, about a block from the house near a clump of bushes.
This is a family pet that has been threatened with harm, and they and we are taking it seriously.
The youngster even captured the cat, cut off her collar, and then put the collar on the owner's porch to show he can kill the cat at any time if his demands are not met.
Kids carrying guns, kids threatening to kill people, and the whole bit. So it doesn't surprise me a bit.
From Troy, Al Allen, TV2 First News.
Well, an extortion conviction could mean up to 15 years behind bars, but since this case apparently involves a juvenile, police say they are not sure, at least not yet, what the sentence could be.
Several Las Vegas tourists were injured today as tempers flared on a picket line outside a hotel. The trouble began when a tourist got into an argument with pickets outside the Frontier Hotel, where members of 5 unions have been on strike now for a year and a half. Angry words were exchanged. A woman hit a tourist in the face, and that's when things really got out of hand. The tourists were not seriously injured, but they say they may file charges against those picketers anyway. As expected, President Clinton today named former New York City Police Commissioner Lee Brown to head the nation's war on drugs. President Clinton introduced the new drug czar during a Rose Garden ceremony. The president says Brown got the job because he gets results. The president intends to make the drug czar job a cabinet-level post. Opponents of Michigan's new law banning assisted suicides are encouraged by a ruling today in Wayne County Circuit Court. The ruling came in the case brought by the American Civil Liberties Union, representing several people with terminal illnesses and doctors who argue that the assisted suicide ban violates privacy rights. Judge Cynthia Stevens will review the arguments that the new law is unconstitutional and is expected to issue a ruling on May 14th on whether the law will remain in effect.
More news ahead on this newscast, but here's a look at some of the stories we'll have coming up for you on Eyewitness News at 6. Another bad investment by the Detroit Police and Fire Pension Fund. We'll tell you what this means to thousands who invested in the fund and who may wind up being losers. Also, if you thought all of your tax problems were over, well, you may be wrong. If you've got certain types of hired help, you could be in for another tax problem on Friday. We'll lay out the facts for you. And why a shampoo at your beauty salon could be dangerous to some people. We'll have these stories and much more coming up on Eyewitness News at 6 o'clock.
It is 4:37 now, and coming up next on TV2's First News, CBS anchorman Dan Rather will join us live to talk about problems with the criminal justice system, problems that are putting convicted murderers back on the streets.
And later, girls all over the country get a rare first-hand look at how their parents make a living. You'll see what TV2's Nancy McCauley taught her daughter today. Stay with us. Well, tonight at 10 on TV2, the CBS program 48 Hours looks at problems with America's criminal justice system. Problems, some say, have allowed the nation's worst criminals to be free to kill. CBS anchorman Dan Rather joining me live now to talk about the show and criminals who are free to kill. Dan, good to see you again.
Good to see you again, Rich.
Tell us about the show tonight.
First of all, I do not think there will be a better hour on television, not tonight, nor this week. I'll give you almost a money-back guarantee on this. This is riveting stuff. It underscores the problem of how many people are being let out of prison on parole and how many of those are clearly the wrong people. Now, we center on one case in Texas, but it could be almost anywhere in the country. There's some states better than others. It could be anywhere. This man killed a couple of people. He was sentenced to prison. He got out on parole. He knifed somebody out on parole, was sent back to prison. Then he was let out again to kill at least one other young person and probably two. So by taking this one case, we italicize how important this problem is.
Dan, how is something like that allowed to happen, not only in Texas, but in any state?
Well, first of all, it's allowed to happen mostly because citizens do not monitor closely what their parole board does. Who knows who's on the parole board? Who knows what they do? That's one. Two, some parole boards are susceptible to what I would call cronyism, actual payoffs, bribery, perjury, but the biggest problem is the whole criminal justice system is under such pressure that the parole system, along with other parts, sometimes cracks, and it happens in almost every state every day.
Dan, does it not get down to the problem where I think the general population, at least what we've been able to find out here in Michigan, is that everybody wants to have these hardened criminals, these murderers behind bars and behind bars forever, but nobody wants a prison next door to their house or their community.
Nor do very many people want to pay for the prison. That is part of the problem. But I think we can agree, Rich, however one feels about that, there are some prisoners who clearly never should be let out. Listen, there's some people who deserve parole, and we all agree that with certain prisoners you should be let out. But here's the point. The system is now so bad and under so much pressure, and in some cases so corrupt, that people like this man that we detailed tonight, this McDuff, known killers, psychopaths, are let out of prison. I don't think most people know that.
Dan, tell me about corruption in the parole system. Well, what did you find out about that?
Well, that it exists in